The Mariners made some roster moves today, sending down the number one prospect in the system and my favorite prospect in Lazaro Montes. Joe and I are going to talk about those roster moves. And then I'm going to do some story time because I had an eventful day down here in Peoria, and I want to make sure you all get to hear about it. And I haven't told Joe these stories yet. I'm excited for him to hear them for the first time. And then we're going to wrap it all up by talking about the Matt Brash live bullpen session, along with a couple other injury updates and Mitch Garver, etc. Thank you guys so much for watching episode 173 of the Hit It Here podcast, part of the Bleav Network. And bear with me here, there's quite a few names. The Asher, the Jeremy, the Jamie, the Dan, the Spencer, the Jackson, the Stephen Floyd, and the Rick, and the random man whose name I did not catch, unfortunately. But I think I'm going to actually, Joe, throw you for a loop already. The first person I mentioned, or one of the people I mentioned there, was Rick. He is one Colby Patnode's father. I met Colby's dad before I met Colby.
What a wild turn of events.
Right? Like, he was just, I was down at the backfields, and it was, like I said, wild day at the backfields. Well, I'm sure we'll get into it here in a little bit. But I was just it was towards the end. Everything was kind of done. I was just kind of sitting there taking it all in, waiting to get a text message from another obligation that I had to go take care of.
Uh-huh.
And a guy came up to me. I Bleav this was Jackson. Troy. I can't forget my boy Troy Smith, who's in the comments and in the streams all the time. He said hi to me today as well. So Troy came up to me and said, "Hey man, how's it going?" Blah blah blah. We chatted for a second, and then Rick heard this. And he walks up to me and goes, "So do you do like a podcast or something like that?" And I go, "Yeah, we do it over on YouTube." And he goes, "Oh, so does my son."
Wild.
And I'm like, "Oh, cool. Who's your son?" And he goes, "Oh, Colby Patnode. He does the Locked On Mariners podcast." I'm like, dude, like,
what a time.
I'm like, I've known Colby forever. So yeah, that is one of my couple of stories from today's day at the backfields. Joe, I kind of sprung that on you. How are you?
No, I'm amazing. That's an incredible start to the pod. I'm not going to lie to you.
Let me tell you, the next story's better.
It gets better than that. So full disclosure, I was on my break at work and Colton was like, "How much time do you have?" And I'm like, "Well, not much. Give me a 3-word teaser." And Patnode was the 3rd word. And I had no idea what it could have meant. And never in a million years would I have expected it to be about Colby's father. So that's really funny. I'm glad you met a bunch of people. That's really dope. That's really awesome. But as you said, there are some housekeeping things that we need to kind of take care of in regards to another like long-ish, not that long, list of names. Guys that were removed from the main major league roster during spring training and reassigned to minor league camp. You mentioned the two, I'd say, most notable ones in Colt Emerson, the number one prospect, and your favorite guy, Lazaro Montes. Both guys having incredible springs, but we all knew this move was coming. It's nothing to really be surprised about. If you're paying attention enough, you'd know that they're not going to make the major league club, despite, some people dreaming about it, if you will. Some people might say that Laz can make the opening day roster, but the other 3 names here are all relievers, guys that were, part of the pile. Left-handed pitcher Austin Kitchen, no longer cooking. Sarin Lau, right-handed pitcher, former position player turned to reliever, within the last year or so? Was it the Dodgers last? I feel like he wasn't doing terrible, but there's probably other guys that they like more out of camp or just want to see more so far still. And then Casey Lawrence was with the organization last year. He's 36. He's, I don't know why that matters. I just felt like it mattered in that moment. Sorry to any other 36-year-olds out there that maybe
you're something weird against anybody older than you.
Listen, no one's older than me. Full stop. All right. No one can be older than me. So you got to go. You gotta go, buddy. No, you've got too many stories to tell. But those are the main. Those are the five guys. Yo, shout out Burgers. The 5 players that have been reassigned to minor league camp. Nothing really else to say about it. The standard protocol for spring training. It's just the natural progression. But Colton, I think I'm ready for another story.
So we mentioned there guys that are older than you, right? And we also mentioned there some top 30 prospects. Okay. So there I was. I was live today on the Mariner Mojo channel, getting some. I believe at the time I was just watching some BP, and Nick Dunn was hitting. I don't remember who. Ryan Bliss was up there, I believe. Samad Taylor, etc. Guys like that were up there, just doing some batting practice. And I'm recording. There's not a whole lot of people over there, and I'm live. I'm talking to the chat, and somebody behind me kind of walks down the bleachers a little bit and says, "Hey, Colton." And I turn around, and it's this man who's talking to me. And I go, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" He goes, "Where's your partner?" And I'm like, "Joe? Oh, he flew home a couple days ago." And he goes, "Oh, I wanted to have some words with him."
Fantastic.
And I go, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "I'm Nick Dunn's dad." And he goes, "And it sounds like Joe wouldn't let you put Nick Dunn on the top 30.
Oh, that's incredible. That's amazing.
And he goes, "You don't even need to worry about me. You need to worry about her." And points at his wife. And they're not happy with the way that you talked about Nick.
Now, can I defend myself for a moment?
I can. Let me finish this really quick. So
that's amazing.
So a couple things to take from this. A, Nick Dunn's parents watch our stuff.
Or they've seen it. They saw their son in a thumbnail, dead center, flanked by Lazaro Montes and Ty Pete, and we opened it with, "No, your son can't be in the top 30." Or at least I did.
Well, I'd say we did not open it that way. I said he should be. And I would like to pass along a message to you from Nick Dunn's mother.
Okay, I'm ready.
And that is, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all.
Whoa. Listen. Can I defend myself for a moment?
Please, the floor is yours. Speak to Nick Dunn's parents.
To Nick Dunn's parents, I would like to say, not that I need a percentage here of credit, but I talked about Nick Dunn potentially being something before you even had the twinkle in your eye about Nick Dunn. Don't. When we looked up Nick Dunn after we realized that he was a minor league signing, the first of the offseason, I was like, oh, pretty good stuff in AAA. And I made you aware of it. That's true. I was talking good stuff about Nick Dunn. I have no issue with what he's done as far as his minor league career. I am of the belief that he has exhausted his time to be evaluated as a prospect compared to some of the other players. To me, he is not fighting for, ranks in systems. He's trying to make the opening day roster. Not many top 30 prospects necessarily are. There's a fine line that they're towing. There's a couple, but it's not always that way, especially one that's been in the bigs for 9 years. And this is his first stop within the Mariners organization. No disrespect to Nick Dunn. Maybe a tiny bit when I first said that, when I didn't allow you to have him, be on the top 30. Because, listen, if he's playing well, he's playing well. Put the money, my foot, my mouth, whatever the phrase is. But man, that's genuinely hilarious.
Yeah, it was so cool.
Was that live?
That was live.
That was live
when that happened. So I got to scrub back through and see if you can catch it at all. Because the weird part was when I was live, a lot of people were coming up and talking to me, so I was just pointing the camera at the ground. So I don't want to point it at people that maybe don't want to be on camera or what have you.
Sure.
So I was pointing at the ground. And I'd be like, "Hey, how you doing?" I'm super awkward about it because again, I don't want to point the camera at people. But yeah, the fact that they came and stopped and said hello, and then Nick came over to the fence and was talking to his parents, and
right.
They mentioned, this guy does a podcast, blah blah, and we were talking to him about his co-host.
No way.
I Bleav I couldn't quite hear it. I didn't want to, intrude or anything like that. But I Bleav that they explained kind of the situation. So just know,
Nick Dunn's out there now. Nick Dunn's watching. I've got a target on my back. Listen, Brock Moore's family, if you're out there, listen to me now. Beacon. I'm sending out a beacon message. Colton hates your son.
Whoa.
He said he was ass. Oh God, that's genuinely that is a top three Mariner Mojo moment ever.
Honestly, yeah, it was incredible.
That's
I
amazing.
was, I was like, I think I played it pretty cool, but my mouth was on the floor
It's
when they
awesome.
came up to me and he's telling me I'm Nick Dunn's dad. I'm like, holy crap!
You're like, I have been
Like,
pounding the table for your son to succeed all spring,
yeah,
in spite of my co-host, who you are now talking smack about. I don't, to be fair, I assume, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope it comes with like the lens of they don't take what I said super serious. Maybe they did, and I hope that they don't. Or, if they happen to listen to this, again, entirely no disrespect to Nick Dunn and his family, kind of a vibe, because he's doing things that I could never even dream of on the baseball field. You know what I mean? So
mm-hmm.
that I think I hope that it doesn't come off in the way that like I'm this harsh, this very staunch individual that's just trying to break people down. You know what I mean?
Mm. Would you say that that outranks the Colby's dad story?
Oh, sorry,
I met a couple of parents today.
sorry, Colbert, but your dad, unless Colby's dad called me some names that Colby's called me for, wimping out on the 999 challenge, maybe, or he called me Jeremy, maybe
Yeah,
that would trump it. But yeah, that Nick Dunn story is insane.
yeah, that was kind of one of those moments today where I was like, whoa, like imposter syndrome hit me
Yeah.
really hard after that. And the rest of the day went pretty smooth. It was a lot of talking to people like that, knew who we were, had watched the channel before. So people were asking about the fantasy baseball league and stuff like that. And then there I was. I heard before I went down to the backfields that Matt Brash was going to throw a bullpen today, or a live bullpen, so to hitters. And I'm like, I got to get down there. And so I went out and I was able to catch Matt Brash throwing to live hitters with Gary Hill and Dean Kramer standing right next to me.
Dean
Let's put it this
Kramer,
way.
the pitcher for the Baltimore Orioles. Daniel Kramer.
Dan Kramer, my bad. And I always do that, by the way. Every time I'm like looking him up, I'm like, Dean Kramer.
You're like, that's not the
And then,
right guy.
like, he's a pitcher. um, but anyway, that was another imposter syndrome moment where I'm standing next to Divish and all these guys, and we're all recording the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
We're all doing the same thing. But that is the long way of saying that Matt Brash threw to live hitters today. Now, they were told to not swing, and we captured this live as well. This was all while we were alive today, Matt Brash's bullpen. And they were told not to swing, and I don't know exactly how well it went, and I don't think it really matters because, again, they're not swinging, so who cares? He definitely looked a little rusty. He definitely looked like he had, missed some time, and he hasn't faced hitters in a while. Like, who wouldn't? Joe, you have the numbers. I believe it was Divish that tweeted them out. Obviously, I couldn't really get them from where I was at, but what did Divish have to say on that?
You're telling me you couldn't just like tell from your phone recording, counting from
Right.
release point to snap of the glove, that he was sitting 93 to 95 on his fastball? You couldn't tell that?
I couldn't. Mm-mm.
And that's, I mean, what, like 3 or 4 ticks down from like his average. I feel like he's usually pumping 98, 99 pretty regularly. And so I think everything that's come out about Brash and his development and his progress back on the mound has been, he is exactly where he needs to be in his like rehabilitation process to pitching, if that makes sense. Every single bullpen that he's made, he's supposed to be exactly at these velocities. Like, this is where they want him to be. It's bad if it's lower than that. So anytime it's like, oh, he was 91, 92 a week and a half ago, that's normal. He's 93, 95 today on March 12th. That's normal for where he is supposed to be at in his throwing program. Also, Divish noted full spin rates on his breaking balls, something that
Which is
your
important.
your eye couldn't catch on to, the RPMs and the way that the laces were moving. You couldn't catch on to that one.
Couldn't do it. Although I will say, like, his stuff looked nasty.
Sure.
Like, he still had great stuff. Like,
Even-
none of that is gone.
Even with, you're talking about he still needs to work off some of the rust, it still is nasty. Yeah, the full spin rates on the breaking balls, that's a great sign, I think, that he's able to grip down on the baseball properly, get the rotation through with like his throwing motion. I mean, I'm no baseball scientist, I'm not someone that knows the best way to up spin rates, lower spin rates, arm angles,
Sticky
arm
stuff.
slots, stuff like that. I'm not necessarily a genius, but full spin rates compared to what to what he's usually doing, where he's at, a month and a half away from being able to get back into game speed action. I think that's a good sign and a telltale sign that he is still progressing exactly where we would want him to be for being able to pitch for the Mariners at least by the beginning of May. They've targeted the end of April as his debut, so expect a rehab assignment somewhere. I don't know how low they'll start him or if they'll do it in Tacoma. Not necessarily entirely sure how it'll work as far as like reliever rehab assignments go, but by mid-April, you'll be hearing murmurs of when Brash will be returning to game action, which is very, very exciting. Someone that the Mariners bullpen missed dearly all last year, and getting him, sure, you're missing a month. That's still going to be, if he stays healthy the rest of the year, 40 innings, more than likely. 40 innings out of Brash, and with full spin rates already in March and ramping up that velocity where he needs to be, it's a very, very good sign that the Mariners bullpen will be better off in 2025 than it was in 2024.
And I talked about that a little bit on 1170 KPUG with Alan Fee. If you guys don't know, I go on there once in a while, a little bit more so because him and I are both down here in Peoria. We talked about how important it is for Matt Brash to come back and like how big of a piece he is in that bullpen. He doesn't need to be Andres Munoz. He doesn't need to be Gregory Santos. He is the bridge to those guys. He's that seventh inning guy or the get you out of a jam and like the fifth or the sixth guy. Your base is loaded, like one out. You need a guy to go out there and get the job done. You turn to Matt Brash. He is. It is hard to overstate how important he is to this bullpen, and just how integral his arm is when you look at the 8 or 9 guys that are out there. Mm-hmm. And so, when it comes to how quickly he's coming back from this injury, it's kind of like it's impressive, honestly. Well, a lot of times guys take a year and a half or so. He's going to be right around a year, right around 12 months. Usually it takes him, 18 or so months. Look at like Robbie Ray, for example.
Yeah.
He got hurt a little bit later when he got hurt during the season, like the first week or so of the season, whereas Brash was kind of a little bit before spring training last year. But Brash is already almost back. And so adding him to this bullpen, to, like you mentioned, a bullpen that was in a pretty rough spot last year. I mean, there's definitely guys that you can kind of write and pen that are going to be in there if they stay healthy, and Munoz and Snyder and Gregory Santos and guys like that. But you're going to be missing Troy Taylor. We know Jackson Kowar's not there. I mean, Gabe Spire and Taylor Saucedo are big question marks right now. Like, as to can they perform to how they did a couple of years ago, or are they going to be last year's version of themselves? In which case, they're probably not worth carrying on this roster. Trent Thornton will be in there for sure, but Matt Brash is that guy that if you pair him with Santos and Munoz, the back end, you have the death bullpen.
Yeah.
And I think because of that, getting Brash back at the end of April is a huge part of this Mariners season.
I would say that... How am I trying to word what I'm trying to say? Brash is probably one of the biggest X factors going into 2025 of a man that is healthy, that is giving quality innings to your team and being the lockdown reliever that you expect him to be. That is one of the largest X factors I think you can kind of point to when you're looking at potential question marks going into 2025 that weren't really there in 2024. One that I might say holds a similar amount of weight is, are we on the precipice of odd year Mitch Garver? Right? The tale as old as time. It's written in stone on his baseball reference page. You can look at patterns, you can look at trends, and you can see ups and downs from Mitch Garver. Last year, 2024, an even year. Even year Garver has not been great. And so far in spring, in 2025, and their spring training stats, Polanco was hitting like 390 during spring last year, so take this with a grain of salt, but 18 ABs for Garver, 8 hits, 3 homers, a 444 average, a 476 on base, a 1.420, a 1400 OPS. in those 18 at-bats from Mitch Garver. He has been mashing, but there was a bit of a scare, and we don't know fully the timetable, I would say, on Garver as it stands right now. So, hit a homer against, who was it against? The
Brewers.
The Brewers. Another NL Central team. The Brewers. Hit a homer, and then I believe it was his next at-bat.
Mm-hmm.
He gets hit on the hand and immediately exits the game. And there was a tweet. Who knows how, the validity of this tweet, but it was very ominous in the sense that someone was like, oh, we're here. We were near wherever Garver exited, and someone asked him, how you doing or how you feeling? And then they thought that they heard out of earshot, my hand's broken, kind of a thing, which is not something that any Mariners fan would hope for, especially with the way that he's been hitting, and the prophecy has been told about odd year Garver. There was a long time in between him exiting, haven't heard anything about the scans, x-rays, nothing. It was a long time. It wasn't until the next day where news broke, good news, positive news. X-rays on Mitch Garver's hand came back negative, showing no break. Trainers and team doctor will look at him on Wednesday, that's today, as we're recording this, and see if a CT scan is necessary, but the Mariners think they avoided any major issue. That is a tweet from Ryan Divish. With how he's been hitting, and the expectation even within Mariners front office about how they want the Mitches to be a bounce back in 2025, their expectation for them and how they will contribute in 2025. No break is big. If he's out for, say, the first month of the season, trying to get back to full hand strength, if it's it's a damaged hand. I don't know if there's no breaks, how much internal damage is really going on there. Will he be able to grip the bat? Will he have full grip strength? I don't know. We haven't really heard a lot about it. So I'm not certain on whether or not Garver will be ready for opening day. I imagine if there's no breaks, there's a very good chance that he will be, but we're 2 weeks away?
Mm-hmm.
We're close.
Yeah, I think
we're close.
2 weeks away as of the day that this podcast releases. 2 weeks away. We should buy our tickets to opening day, by the way. We should probably do that, huh?
Yeah, that might be a good idea.
Might be a good idea. Mitch Garver, like you talked about a little bit, he's a big part of this team. And whether people like it or not, I know a lot of people don't like it. And I'm not here to say that the Mariners shouldn't have done more during the offseason. They absolutely should have. But for better or for worse, this is the team the Mariners are rolling with. And that means that Mitch Garver's a big part of it. Mm-hmm. And what choice do you have but to bank on odd year Mitch Garver? The fact that he's going to miss some time this spring after he's been off to such a torrid start, which, is great to see, but also for his mentals is huge for where he was at last year. That's big. The Mariners, he's the backup catcher. I would assume that, let's say Garver does miss some time, you'll probably see Blake Hunt come up.
Yeah.
Who, in his own right, I don't know if you saw the home run he hit the other day.
Moonshot.
Over the pavilion. Yeah, that was crushed. But he would probably be the next guy up, which means Cal would be playing a lot. He'd be catching a lot. And so I don't think Harry Ford's ready.
No.
I don't think it. Maybe I'd be okay if they started him at AAA. I'd be fine with that. But I think that he's not ready, and Garver is until he's ready, Garver has to be a part of this team. And I think, honestly, I am okay with the Mariners giving Garver, at least in the first month, the lion's share of the DH role.
Yeah.
And because of that, the fact that they may now be without him for a little bit is scary, man, because he's a big thumper in that lineup. We've seen Jorge Polanco's had a good spring so far as well. Mitch Garver, he plays a big role because he is the backup catcher. If he was just solely a DH, if he was Mitch Haniger, right? Mm-hmm. Like if Haniger goes up there right now and gets hit in the hand, God forbid, because that guy's been through so much. Just so we're I don't want to say like it doesn't matter. You know what I mean?
It matters less from a roster construction point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For the guy himself, for the person, for the player, I would feel horrible. Mm-hmm. But from a roster construction point, it's not as big of a blow as losing your backup catcher. And especially in an organization that's a little bit I wouldn't say low, because I think Nottingham can do it. I think Blake Hunt can do it. It's just Mitch Garver, when he's right, is probably your everyday DH, and that is a huge asset to have in your lineup. So I think that the fact the Mariners dodged a bullet is good. That game, I wasn't at that game. I was actually in Salt River Fields watching, because my brother's in town, and he's a big fan of the Rockies. He lived in Denver for a while. So we were over at Salt River Fields watching a Rockies game, and I get this notification saying that Mitch Garver was removed from the game because he was hit by a pitch.
Yeah.
And I'm like, not great. And then a few minutes later, I see another notification on Twitter saying that Rick Riz has been hit in the head. That one, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure everyone's heard the audio by now. Maryvale, and this is a shout out to Aaron Hughes, writer boy, Air Bear. He says that anytime he tells people that the Brewers have a facility in Maryvale, they all laugh because it's not a good area. That has to be like built on some like ancient like native burial ground or something.
Just
because the fact that Garver got hit, the fact that Rick Riz, the pride and joy of the Seattle Mariners, got hit in the head, they should never go back there. Plain and simple.
They're canceling every game at Maryvale going forward. And with not even to the surprise of anybody, Rick being in good spirits about it, wearing a helmet the following, like, very standard Rick Riz stuff. It was scary. Like, I listened to the audio after the fact as well, and it's just not something
jarring.
Yeah, it's jarring. It's not something fly ball, coming into the booth. You don't wish that upon anybody, let alone someone that is part of your broadcast team that you care about. It could be anyone in that booth. It doesn't necessarily have to be someone that's speaking on the radio or broadcasting the game. It could be someone that's just walking by with, "Here's your coffee, Rick," bang, kind of, you know what I mean? It's just a scary situation in general.
I'm just glad to hear that Garver and Rick are both okay. Hopefully Garver's able to take some at-bats soon. But that's going to do it from us here on episode 173 of the Hit It Here podcast, the Nick Dunn's Parents episode of the podcast. And go Mariners.
I'm sorry.